Incredible twist, single dad janitor's brave rescue exposed a hidden connection with wealthy CEO. Danny's heart raced as he scrubbed the floor of the high school auditorium, the faint smell of bleach mingling with the anticipation hanging in the air. The fundraiser was supposed to be a big break for the arts program, a chance to help pave pathways for students like his daughter, Lily. Just a few feet away, parents mingled, their laughter drowning out the sounds of his mop gliding across the tiles. But beneath this vibrant facade, a storm churned inside him. He was proud of his work, but each day, the weight of bills pressed harder on his shoulders, reminding him of a life still hanging by a thread. Just one day without regrets, he whispered to himself, wishing the shadows of his past would not loom so large over his daughter's future. He postponed his dreams of engineering for the sake of Lily's hopes, but did she understand the sacrifices he made? Could she ever grasp the depths of his struggle? The thought tightened his chest like a vice. He loved her fiercely, but the thought of not being enough gnawed at him. As the crowd murmured in excitement, Danny caught a glimpse of Mark Thompson, the town's affluent CEO, smoothing his suit, a stark contrast to Danny's janitor's attire. How different their worlds were. Yet, for just a moment, he allowed himself to imagine how much easier things would be if he could come home with news that his dreams were finally achievable, that struggles might end. But that daydream swiftly turned into a nightmare. Before he could process it, the stage prop, a towering monstrosity hastily erected, began to wobble. Danny's instincts kicked in, propelling him forward. There was no time to dwell on consequences. The world blurred as he dove, grabbing Mark just as the nightmare unfolded behind them. The loud crash drowned out the screams, and for a moment, everything froze. Was he a hero or just a man trying to survive? As the dust settled and the crowd's panic subsided, he was aware of the skeptical glances from parents who had always looked down on him. Mark's eyes were full of gratitude but also curiosity, maybe even admiration. Could this act of desperation change their lives? Before he could grasp the implications, Mark approached him. "Let's talk," Mark said, and Danny felt his palms sweat. What was this rising tension in his chest? Was it hope or dread? Blanketed underneath praise, he sensed a lurking potential, a chance at something more than mopping floors. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The weight of Mark's attention felt like a blessing and a curse. Together, they spoke of ambitions and possibilities, but Danny clenched his fists, grappling with a sudden flood of anger and bewilderment upon learning about Mark's family, how Mark's father had turned his back on Danny's family years ago, casting a pall over his life that felt more like a shackle than destiny. The voice of his own father echoed in his mind, integrity above all. Lily wanted to go to college, to chase dreams unfettered. Could his decision to accept Mark's mentorship, this lifeline, taint everything Danny had fought to protect? Would the complexities of their shared history entrap her in a spotlight of scrutiny? His heart weighed heavy with the possibility of success contrasted against the jagged edges of his past. The moment stretched, a tightrope walk between past hurts and future aspirations. As he stared into Mark's hopeful eyes, Danny felt the ground shift beneath him. The thrill of opportunity thrust against the inevitability of betrayal. That faint ringing of the phone jolted him, a startling reminder of the chaos lurking just beyond his choices. A family member had discovered a hidden letter. What did it contain? Would it shatter his already fragile world? With rising tension constricting around him, Danny stood at a precipice, a battleground of loyalty and ambition, as the phone continued to beep insistently. Danny's hand trembled as he reached for the phone. The rising tide of anxiety threatened to overwhelm him, drowning out everything else. He hesitated, heart thumping wildly in his chest, before finally swiping the screen. "Uncle Jim," the message read cryptically. We need to talk. Just found something. The word settled heavily in the pit of Danny's stomach. Uncle Jim wasn't prone to dramatics. This had to be serious. He glanced back at Mark, who was scoping the area, likely gauging responses from the crowd. The man was a strategic thinker. Danny couldn't afford to show weakness right now. I need to take this, Danny muttered, feeling Mark's gaze linger with curiosity as he stepped into the hallway. Each step felt like a decision etched in stone, but the undercurrent of dread was unshakable. In the privacy of the corridor, Danny leaned against the stark white wall and took a deep breath. Another message chimed in. Remember the letter from your dad? About the accident? I think you should see this. Meet me at the diner at 3. Danny's heart raced. The letter, the one buried in a shoebox in his closet he dared not open. It had been the catalyst of so much pain, a jarring reminder of his father's expectations and buried truths. Why now? He muttered, frustration mingling with fear. He already felt he was teetering on the edge of his own existence. Being a janitor felt like a weight he carried, a label he couldn't shake even after saving Mark, even as the horizon seemed to illuminate with unexpected prospects. Did he really want to dredge up the remnants of his family's past? He thought of Lily. Would she understand the revelations? Would she want him to confront demons that had haunted him for decades? Danny leaned further into the wall, trying to connect his aspirations with the looming specter of shame and familial betrayal. Get your act together, he murmured to himself, wrestling with a surge of conflicting emotions. This meeting could offer answers, possibly upheaval, but answers nonetheless. Danny considered his options. Ignoring Uncle Jim might mean another opportunity slipped through his fingers, yet attending the rendezvous could stir up chaos. Standing at this emotional crossroads felt agonizing. The opportunity offered by Mark glittered like a jewel, but it was interlaced with shadows he couldn't ignore. Pushing himself off the wall, Danny re-entered the auditorium, his decision hardening into resolve. Mark looked over, concern flickering in his eyes. Everything okay? Mark asked, casual, but with an edge that hinted at deeper understanding. Just family stuff, Danny replied, masking the turmoil broiling beneath. We should talk logistics for your mentorship. Moving forward, what's on the agenda? Mark nodded, impressed by the abrupt pivot in Danny's demeanor. Oh, I have plenty of ideas. But I'd like to hear how you envision your path first. That question loaded the air with tension, forcing Danny to confront the reality of his choices publicly. Was he even qualified to define that path? Or was it to be dictated by others, people like Mark, or even Uncle Jim? The chair scraped loudly against the floor as Danny settled beside Mark, and suddenly the gravity of his aspirations collided with his past. Listen, Mark, Danny began, voice steadier than he felt. I want to carve out a future where I don't feel trapped. But there are things I need to face first, truths I can't escape. Mark studied him intently. We all have our pasts. It's how we deal with them that defines the future. Sometimes it means confronting what we'd rather forget. There it was, the echo of his father's lessons again. But could he really master his fate and shield Lily from the scars? He felt the floor beneath him shift, not in uncertainty, but in revelation. Whatever lay ahead, it was time for him to choose, not just for himself, but for Lily. As Mark leaned in, ready to guide him through potential opportunities, Danny's phone vibrated once more, a stark reminder that any decision came at a price. The clock was ticking, and the diner mirror held reflections not just of decision but of reparations long overdue. Next steps? Danny asked, the gravity of his past lingering as an anxious hum in the back of his mind. Together we can craft a strategy, Mark replied confidently, but first, we have to deal with those shadows. Rising to his feet, Danny felt the anxious knot inside him unravel slightly. He was moving closer to a confrontation of balancing personal history with professional dreams. And the next moment would either draw him further into hope or thrust him back into chaos. Would he embrace the truth, or flee from it once more? Are you ready for what you might discover? Mark asked pointedly, urging Danny to consider the intricacies ahead. With breath held tight, Danny nodded, knowing full well the answers could be liberating or devastating. The next chapter of his life loomed ahead, filled with uncertainty and potential. The decision must be made as they ventured deeper into uncharted territory. Danny stood at the threshold of uncertainty, his heart pounding as he processed Mark's question. The gravity of what lay ahead felt like a lead weight resting heavily in his chest. Could he truly confront the echoes of the past that haunted him? Could he navigate this emotional labyrinth while grappling with the role he had carved out for himself? The diner was a small, unassuming establishment that smelled faintly of grease and brewed coffee, a stark contrast to the bright aspirations Mark was eager to help him pursue. Danny pictured himself sitting across from Uncle Jim in that booth, the worn leather cracking under pressure. Here, among the various clinks of dishes and muffled conversations, he would have to unearth the skeletons he had buried for so long. Was he ready? The question ricocheted inside him, amplifying the fear that clawed at his insides. He thought about Uncle Jim's message and the long-buried letter from his father. Those vanished moments were tied to expectations he felt ill-equipped to meet. "Danny, we need to fortify your confidence before we can tackle your past head-on," Mark said, scrutinizing him closely, as if reading the turmoil within the lines of his apprehensive expression. "Facing it will give you power." Mark's words reverberated through Danny, igniting a fragile flame of determination. Just moments ago, he had felt like a puppet controlled by his history. Perhaps this was the shift he needed, where confronting the painful narrative could dismantle its hold on him. The idea felt both paralyzing and exhilarating. Taking a deep breath, he redirected the conversation. "Let us build a plan, then. The kind that doesn't just look forward but also honors the pieces of my past." He looked directly at Mark, searching for acknowledgement. "Great idea," Mark replied, his voice steady. "This will be about empowerment, understanding the duality of your journey both as a janitor and as who you've become from all that you've faced. But first, what are you hoping to reveal today?" Danny shifted in his seat, focusing on what he needed to confront before meeting Uncle Jim. He couldn't ignore the past any longer, nor could he allow it to define him. "I want to clarify why my father's expectations haunt me so relentlessly. I want to untangle how they've shaped my identity." Each word felt like a small step toward liberation. "That's a strong foundation," Mark encouraged, reflecting back the strength in Danny's resolve. The clock ticked loudly as Danny's phone buzzed, a reminder that time was slipping away. Unsure of what awaited him at the diner, he considered what revelations could arise. Would he discover parts of himself he hadn't recognized? A deeper well of resilience perhaps? As Mark laid out a structured approach toward mentorship, from establishing specific skills to engaging in networking opportunities, a quiet ambition ignited within Danny. These weren't just professional skills, they were steps that would allow him to reclaim his narrative. With every point Mark made, Danny felt enveloped by a whirlwind of potential. Each new idea was a thread pulling him closer to the destiny he'd once thought unimaginable. Yet, looming behind the veil of opportunity was the unshakable anticipation of Uncle Jim's revelation. Would the outcome shatter his resolve or fortify it? "Here's the thing," Danny said, feeling a clarity emerge that had been obscured by years of doubt. "No matter what comes out of today's meeting with Jim, I'm ready to face it. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to know my father's truths, however painful they may be." Mark nodded, visibly impressed, and an air of solidarity bloomed between them. "That's the spirit. Confrontation brings clarity, and it's time to lead your life on your terms." With newfound confidence to drive his choices, Danny rose from his seat, ready to embark on what could be the most challenging day of his life. The anticipation coiled around them, laced with both fear and hope. As they approached the diner, he couldn't shake the feeling that the next few hours would alter the course of his life irreparably. What awaited him inside was unclear, but the real question loomed larger: would he emerge from Uncle Jim's revelations with a clearer sense of himself, or would the weight of the past pull him back down? Only time would tell. As Danny pushed open the door to the diner, a chime announced their arrival, slicing through the din of breakfast orders and the griddle sizzle. The familiar scent of frying eggs enveloped him, but his stomach twisted tighter with apprehension rather than hunger. He spotted Uncle Jim at their usual booth, an island of warmth amidst the bustling chaos, and felt a pull toward him both welcoming and daunting. Danny's heart raced as he approached, every step charged with the weight of expectation. Uncle Jim looked up from his coffee and offered a small smile that pierced through Danny's anxiety. He gestured for Danny to join him, his demeanor inviting yet serious, the quiet strength of family settling in the space between them. "Hey, kid. Glad you made it," Jim said, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of Danny's thoughts. "Thanks for the invite," Danny replied, his voice wavered. "I wanted to talk." "About your father?" Jim asked, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied Danny's expression. "Yeah," Danny admitted, gripping the edges of the booth with clammy hands. "I need to understand why I still feel trapped by his expectations." Uncle Jim's gaze softened, a mixture of empathy and something deeper, almost defensive. "You know, your father had his battles, too." The words hung heavily in the air. Danny's mind raced. Uncle Jim was referencing the very essence of the legacy that had suffocated him. "I've spent so long resenting his choices. I don't know if I'm ready to see him as just human." "That's fair," Jim replied, pouring more coffee into his cup. "But understanding doesn't mean condoning. It's about giving yourself the freedom to define who you are, separate from what he wanted you to become." Danny leaned back, absorbing the weight of Uncle Jim's insights. He was feeling a tumult of emotions, defiance battling against the urge to connect. "I've always felt that there was this expectation to succeed in a way only he approved of. Like nothing I did was ever enough." His voice quivered with barely contained frustration. "Did you ever stop to think that perhaps he was afraid? Afraid of failing you, or afraid of what happens if he does not guide you?" Jim's words pierced through Danny's walls, pushing aside the debris of long-held resentments. "Maybe," Danny conceded, but doubt still gnawed at him. But that fear made it impossible to see him as a person. Just a man trying to make his way. "Exactly," Jim replied. "Your fear is your freedom if you let it be. The expectations were never yours to shoulder." Danny's breath caught in his throat. Was it that simple? The notion that his father's expectations were projections of his own fears felt empowering, yet it was underlined by an unsettling realization: he was free only if he chose to be. The pulse of resolution coursing through him started to offer clarity, but came wrapped in a shroud of fear. "Jim, if I accept that truth, does it mean I'm ready to forgive?" Danny raised his eyes to meet Jim's, seeking reassurance. "It's not about forgiveness, it's about understanding. It's about stepping into a narrative that serves you, not him," Jim said, his tone earnest. Danny's heart raced at the possibility of rewriting his story. The revelation was thrilling. Yet, a lingering shadow loomed since he'd granted himself that insight. Would it break the fragile bonds he had built? With determination emerging like a flickering flame, Danny announced, "Then I want to explore that, to truly understand how to separate my identity from his legacy." As conversations continued, Danny's thoughts were a flicker between excitement and apprehension. The prospect of confronting his father's realities with Uncle Jim's guidance ignited a thrill within him. He could see a potential path forward, a way to reclaim his identity. But would stepping forward into that path lead him closer to clarity or plunge him into chaos? "Eventually, you'll need to confront not just your father's ghosts," Jim finally said, "but possibly even the shadows cast by those who stay silent." Danny's breath caught again. What did that mean for him? Would Uncle Jim too be one of those shadows he'd have to confront? An antagonist woven tight with the storyline he had yet to fully understand. As the waitress came to refill their coffee, Danny realized he was standing at a crossroad, where paths of revelation diverged and coiled around him. Whatever awaited, he could no longer navigate by the fear of the past but by the courage to step into the unknown. And the real question tightened within: would his journey to self-discovery reveal unexpected allies, or would it challenge existing relationships to the breaking point? The sound of silverware clinking echoed off the walls as Danny mulled over Jim's words. The din around him faded into a dull hum, the weight of the conversation anchored him, as though he were standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. The smeared coffee stains on the table were a reminder of so many conversations dissected over the years, but this one felt different, charged with anticipation and the promise of transformation. "Jim, how do I begin?" Danny finally asked, his uncertainty surfacing again. "What is the first step to doing this to truly understand?" Jim leaned back, considering. "First, you need to ask yourself what you truly want. Not what he wants for you, but what ignites something within you. It may feel foreign, but it's vital to uncovering who you really are." A knot twisted in Danny's stomach. The question was daunting. What did he want? Was he even capable of projecting a desire that wasn't buried under a lifetime of his father's expectations? He thought of the art that had brought him joy as a child, the sketches discarded and forgotten, yet the passion still flickered beneath the surface like embers waiting for a breeze. "I think I want to get back to drawing," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The admission felt almost sacrilegious, considering the preordained path he had trudged for so long. "That essay start," Jim encouraged, leaning forward now. "Then find a way to express that. Maybe join a class or just sketch every day. Let it be for you and you alone." The idea sparked something in Danny. A flicker of excitement ignited the creativity that had been suppressed like a long-lost friend. What if he explored that avenue? What if he opened that door and let it flood back into his life? "Maybe I could do that," Danny said slowly, the weight of possibility beginning to lift. "But I'm worried. I can't shake the thought that it might upset my father if he finds out. It's like I'd be betraying him." Jim shook his head firmly. "It's not betrayal to pursue your happiness. If anything, it would offer a different perspective to your dad. You might even teach him something about living his own truth." A rush of ideas took flight in Danny's mind, weaving through the uncertainties and grammatical structures of his past constraints. Perhaps drawing wasn't just an escape, it could act as a bridge, a way to connect who he was with who he might become. Still, the notion of confronting the shadows, of facing the concept of his father's expectations, loomed heavily. He needed to prepare for that conversation. The thought was as thrilling as it was terrifying. What if he reacts badly? Danny questioned, his pulse quickening. What if it only deepens the rift? That's a risk, but consider the alternative, Jim replied, his voice steady. Staying in that trap is not living, it's merely surviving. It sounds like an old echo trapped in your mind. The only way to get past those walls is to confront them head-on. As the conversation flowed, the waitress returned with their coffees, her bright smile an anchor back into the bustling reality around them. Still, Danny felt adrift between two worlds, one marked by safety and constraint, the other by vibrant possibility. The realization of his potential left a prickling sensation at the base of his neck. A vision of himself illustrating color leaping off the page, the smell of fresh paint, the rush of freedom invigorated him. But deep down, he wondered if this was just a fleeting fancy, or the revolution of his true self seeking to emerge. Then it settled. "I'll try to draw again and see how that feels," Danny finally declared, his voice more assured this time. "But I have to talk to him about it. I won't let his ghosts dictate my future any longer." Jim nodded, his expression a mix of pride and encouragement. "That's the spirit, Danny. It'll take courage to carve out your identity, but it'll be worthwhile." Yet, despite the newfound resolve, a cold sense of trepidation threaded through him. Was he truly prepared for the confrontation ahead? Would voicing his desires provoke a cataclysmic reaction that would sever the last ties to his father? As Danny left the diner, the weight of the conversation felt both liberating and daunting, a mix of exhilaration and fear. He walked the cracked pavement under his feet, mind racing at the idea of a sketchbook waiting to be filled with new visions. But there remained one lingering question: would the first stroke on the blank page lead to a resurgence of life, or would it unearth long-hidden tensions that could change everything? That uncertainty loomed large. His journey towards self-discovery had begun, but now it faced its greatest test. As dusk settled on the horizon, transforming the sky into an artist's palette of colors, the uncertainty loomed like a shadow behind him. Would he have the strength to face the inevitable reckoning waiting at his father's doorstep, and take the first true step toward his freedom? As Danny made his way home, the fading colors of the sunset mirrored the internal conflict churning within him. Each step he took felt heavier with the weight of the conversation that lay ahead. The prospect of revealing his desire to draw loomed in his mind, intertwining with shadows from his past, creating a discomforting tapestry woven from fear and hope. Upon entering his apartment, he was greeted by the familiar hum of the refrigerator, the sound oddly comforting yet invasive. The sparse furnishings were a reflection of his life, functional but devoid of vitality. His gaze flickered to a corner, where a dusty sketchbook lay, its binding cracked, echoing the neglect of his creative hunger. He hesitated for a moment, his heart pounding in tandem with the unending questions racing through his mind. What would he say? How could he explain a passion he had buried so deeply? Closing his eyes, he imagined the vibrancy of strokes on paper, the exhilaration flooding his veins as colors merged and formed life. But with each heartbeat, the specter of his father's expectations crept closer, threatening to snuff out the flicker of inspiration. Instead of retreating from the uncertainty, Danny chose to confront it. He walked to the corner, knelt beside the sketchbook, and pulled it close. The muted grays and browns of his environment began to blur as he flipped open the pages. Memories poured forth, sketches of landscapes he'd seen in books, caricatures of people on the street, pages marked with half-finished ideas and forgotten dreams. With trembling hands, he grabbed a pencil and poised it over the blank page. The moment felt monumental, as though poised on the edge of a precipice, and as he hesitated, fear gripped him anew. What if his father saw this? What if he knew? Danny's mind raced with possible scenarios, each more daunting than the last. His father's disappointment would echo like a thunderclap. Would it change everything? Shaking off the paralysis, Danny forced himself to focus on the sensation of the pencil against the paper. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding and, with a swift stroke, ignited a single line, a modest beginning to rekindle his lost passion. The line curved and twisted into something he found surprisingly beautiful, a flower reaching toward the sun. Time seemed to slip away as he lost himself in the flow of creativity, each stroke releasing tension he had carried for too long. Hours melted into one another as sketches took shape, each one breathing life into his spirit. With every drawing, he dismantled the chains that had bound him, each artifact emblazoning his heart with burgeoning confidence. But as his joy swelled, so did the thoughts of his father. Reality soon clawed its way back. Would this release be short-lived if he didn't face his father? The starkness of the conversation he needed to have loomed just over the horizon, an unavoidable confrontation shadowing every jubilant moment in his artistic rendezvous. As Danny put down his pencil, exhaustion washed over him. The creative surge had invigorated a once dormant part of him, yet the afterglow was dimmed by the knowledge of the impending collision. Tomorrow, he would seek out his father, lay bare his heart and dreams, armed with the artistry that began to shape him anew. But the question still lingered: could this act of bravery indeed transform their relationship, or would it deepen the chasm that had silently formed over the years? Drawing in a deep breath, Danny resolved that he would embrace both fear and passion, his discovery unwilling to be shackled by others' expectations any longer. With the night settling in, he closed the sketchbook, knowing tomorrow he would finally take a step toward a new dawn. The air felt electric, a pivotal moment approached, teetering on the edge of confrontation. The horizon gleamed with potential. What awaited would decide not only his fate but also reshape the dynamics of a father-son bond strained for far too long. Whether art would become the bridge or the barrier, one truth remained: the time had come to face the music. Dawn crept in with the softest light, spilling through the blinds in Danny's apartment as he stirred awake, visions of petals and brushstrokes still dancing in his mind. The vibrant allure of the previous night's creations lingered like a perfume he quickly became intoxicated by. Yet, beneath that tempting haze, an ominous heaviness clung to his chest, each tick of the clock amplifying the impending confrontation with his father. He rose from the bed, determination mingling with anxiety. Today was not just another day, it was a watershed moment that could redefine the contours of his life. The empty sketchbook awaited him on the table, a canvas for what could either be his liberation or introduction to deeper despair. He had made a choice to reveal his passion, yet a nagging fear stirred in the pit of his stomach. What if his father dismissed his dream summarily? What if tradition ruled once more, leaving artistry peering through locked doors like a forgotten secret? Danny prepared himself with calculated resolve. He looked carefully in the mirror, mentally rehearsing the words he had crafted through the night. What if he led with honesty, rather than fear? What if he embraced his vulnerability, making room for both of their emotions in the conversation? But as the reflections converged into a visage of uncertainty, doubt dripped through his bravado. How could he strip away years of stifling silence and tradition in a single conversation? As he dressed, he unfurled a strategy, one not born from meticulous planning but rather from the raw impromptu instincts of youthful ambition. He envisioned realizations reflected in his father's eyes, the shift from evident disapproval to glimpses of understanding. To convey that his journey through art was not an act of rebellion, but a quest for authenticity. The path to his father's office was busy, the city alive with morning chatter and energy. Each face he passed seemed to blur into the background of his contemplations, his focus on the road ahead marked by the anxiety of what awaited him. What if his father could not comprehend the beauty Danny saw in bending lines and vibrant hues? Would he be able to wrap his mind around Danny's longing for exploration beyond the mundane? Finally, as the building loomed ahead, a familiar weight pressed down on his shoulders. With each step he took through the lobby, merging into the crowd of professionals, a sinking realization loomed: Danny had never truly spoken to his father in a way that acknowledged both their individual dreams. Their conversations had always been transactional, a sterile exchange of expectations and obligations. This needed to be different. Today, he would need to claim his voice. Gathering resolve, he approached the office, where the doors stood both a barrier and a threshold to something monumental. He knocked softly, an action infused with desperation and hope. When his father's voice called out, commanding yet tinged with curiosity, Danny paused. Heart racing, he took a deep breath and stepped over the threshold, his heartbeat pounding in his ears like a war drum. "Dad, I need to talk to you," he began, firm despite the shaking of his hands. "About something important." The puzzled expression crossing his father's face unveiled layers of ire and unease, yet Danny was undeterred. The sketches tucked under his arm were not mere drawings, they were pieces of his heart waiting to be shared. He felt the weight of his father's expectations like a shackle, but deeper still was the desire to connect, genuinely, amidst their tumultuous history. "Sit down, Danny. What's this about?" His father's scowl only heightened the tension. Danny swallowed hard, cognitive dissonance swirling in his mind. He had never expected this kind of confrontation would be so loaded, so fraught with emotional stakes. As he finally found his voice, the air between them felt electric, alive with the promise of both confrontation and discovery. Would his father be willing to listen? Would the world of art crystallize as a bridge instead of a battlefield? With a steadying breath, Danny began unfolding the narrative of his artistic journey, eyes locked on the figure before him. The moment felt limitless yet fraught with doubts. It was time for both of them to reshape the conversation, to inspire understanding through artistry. But there was no way of knowing if this endeavor would forge a new connection or dissolve into a tempest of disappointment, and as he spoke, he felt the tension shift even further. The beats of his heart echoed through the silence. Was this the moment that could finally change everything, or the beginning of another painful chapter? As Danny's words hung in the air, the gap between dream and duty painted a chasm that felt insurmountable. He watched his father's expression shift, an amalgam of skepticism and fleeting curiosity flickering across his features. Each phrase he uttered felt like a pebble dropped into the ocean of their silence, causing ripples of tension that challenged the laws of their relationship. "I've been sketching," he asserted, tone wavering but unwavering in commitment. "These aren't just pictures, they reflect how I see the world, how I feel alive." He presented one piece, the paper trembling in his grip, nearly as much as his voice. "This one captures the sunrise on Main Street." "It's bright, bursting with color." Danny, his father interrupted, the harshness biting into his enthusiasm. "You know I don't have time for this." The interruption cut deeper than a tightly wound ribbon, unraveling some of the heartfelt sincerity he was trying to weave. Across the table, the walls of his father's world were high and fortified. "But that's just it," Danny implored, leaning forward slightly in desperation. "You think I'm wasting time, but I'm searching for meaning, something that matters. You taught me to strive for success, but what if this is my success?" The air grew thick with unspoken words, each inch of distance between them aching with the weight of unmet expectations. Danny felt the instinct to shrink before his father's unwavering gaze, but something flourished inside him, a budding realization that only he could define himself. His father leaned back, arms crossed, and at that moment, Danny recognized the familiar posture. It was one that signaled defense and the closure of barriers. This was not just a critique of his artwork but a challenge to his deeply ingrained perceptions of what success meant. The gears turned in Danny's mind as he weighed his father's rigid values against his blossoming aspirations. "Art cannot support you, Danny," his father stated, almost resentfully. "You know that. I've worked my entire life to build stability, to give you and your sister a future, and you throw that away for doodles." Each syllable was wrapped in what felt like disappointment, yet Danny sensed a deeper frustration. Fear for his son's future mingled with a desire for control. Doodles. That single word struck uncomfortably, alive with derision. Danny's heart pounded at the corners of the conversation, caught between the inheritance of responsibility and the rebellion of choice. He inhaled sharply, grounding himself in the conviction that this was his moment of agency. Art is not merely a pastime, it's a profession, a life choice, he asserted defiantly. The canvas of their conversation abruptly shifted, momentum teetering on the brink of discord. "It's vibrant and necessary, just like the structured life you built. Can't they exist together?" Silence enveloped the room, an uncomfortable pause filled with the scent of simmering tensions. A beat passed between them, the weight of generations trapping them in a cycle of misunderstanding. Knowing the conversation could spiral, he searched for an anchor in that moment, a spark to remind them of their shared humanity. "Dad, I can't ignore who I am. I need to honor that part of myself." Danny's voice softened, the blunt edges dissolving into raw sincerity. "I want your respect, but I need your understanding more. Can we find a way to meet in the middle?" The flicker of vulnerability in his father's eyes momentarily shattered the veneer of authority. Danny felt a tremor of hope, perhaps this was the moment of change he longed for. Yet, with the intention hovered a fear of vulnerability, the possibility that his father might retreat into the comfortable shell of tradition. "Meeting in the middle?" his father echoed, the skepticism unmistakable. "What does that even look like in your world?" The question hung in the air, and as Danny contemplated the answer, a realization washed over him: their confrontation contained a potential for transformation, not just for him, but for them both. An inescapable tension lingered as he searched for words that could bridge their chasms, and just as he was prepared to answer, the office door opened unexpectedly, sealing the conversation in uncertainty. "What are you doing?" an unfamiliar voice queried, entering the scene like a puzzle piece out of context, tossing Danny's resolve into yet another swirl of chaos. His mind raced, heart still pounding a rhythm of urgency. Would this interruption derail him, or could it perhaps redirect the path toward reconciliation? The moment had arrived. Had he the courage to navigate forward despite growing adversity? Danny's mind darted as he turned to face the source of the interruption. A woman stood in the doorway, a blend of confusion and surprise etched into her features. He felt as if the floor had shifted beneath him, the sturdy ground of the conversation crumbling to dust. In this moment, all the complexity he had just begun to unravel with his father felt fragile and exposed, like a freshly painted canvas left out in the rain. "Excuse me," Danny replied, forcing a casual tone as he glanced between his father and the stranger. The tension prickled at the back of his neck, urging him to retreat, yet he defied that impulse. He was tired of retreating. "Are you Danny Mitchell?" she asked, a hint of urgency in her voice that defied her calm demeanor. "Yeah, that's me." His heartbeat quickened, sensing that this woman might shake things up even further. His father regarded her with a mix of suspicion and intrigue, his arms still crossed, the barrier he erected remaining unyielding. "Nice to finally meet you. I'm Claire, from the art collective downtown." Danny's stomach flipped. He had submitted some sketches a few weeks ago, uncertain of where they would lead. "I wanted to speak with you about your work. It's not often we see such raw emotion captured in a piece. We're planning a showcase next month and would love to feature some of your pieces." The words hung heavy in the air. Uncertainty wrestled with excitement as Danny processed her proposition. He had been yearning for validation and acknowledgement that he wasn't simply a boy with a pencil trying to escape the clutches of expected success. This was validation. "Are you serious?" he managed, tone edged with disbelief. His father's expression soured as if he had bitten into something bitter. "Absolutely," Claire replied, sincerity pulsing in her words. "We believe in fostering new talent. You have something special. I didn't expect to find you here. I had thought we were meeting at the gallery." Danny's thoughts collided with his father's disapproval, splintering the vision of what success looked like. A single showcase. It wasn't just validation, it could be a lifeline. "Is there any way I can bring my father into this?" Danny asked, casting a tentative glance towards the man who had shaped his worldview, still wrestling with his own expectations. The question felt monumental, a bridge between dreams and their current reality. Danny's father remained silent, a storm brewing in his eyes. "I think it's vital he understands what you're doing," Claire interjected, sensing the brewing conflict. "Art can be more than just a hobby. It's a platform for expression. It has the power to connect us all." Danny felt a spark ignite within him. This wasn't just about art, it was about being seen, really seen, beyond the definitions handed down by his father or society. Even more, it was about being heard. "You're right. It's not just about me. It's about honoring who I am and what I want to convey." The silence in the room thickened, and for a moment, he felt a flicker of hope, a sense that the future may not be as predetermined as he had feared. Yet, just as quickly, the familiar weight of doubt returned as he considered the ramifications of sharing this newfound opportunity with his father. "What would you do, Dad?" he prodded. "Would you rather have me prioritize stability over what could be a turning point for me? Isn't this what you wanted for me? To chase my dreams? To make my mark?" His father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, trapped between loyalty to his own ideals and the growing recognition that Danny may be charting a course of meaningful success in his own way. The depth of their exchange hung in the air as a new possibility opened a conflict not only of wills but of love and the connections they sought to forge or mend. Would his father concede? Just then, Danny noticed Claire's expression shift, curiosity peaking as she surveyed the moment. The tension and uncertain hope illuminated something profound about the fragile nature of familial relationships and dreams deferred. "Maybe we should all discuss this together," Claire suggested cautiously. "There's a lot of potential here and I think an open dialogue could help." With her words echoing in his mind, Danny realized the tension was far from resolved. The outcome teetered on the edge. What would this next conversation reveal about his father's heart and his own destiny? The path of reconciliation seemed possible, but would he be ready to embrace his truth no matter the stakes? As anticipation crackled in the room, a question lingered: would he finally be able to transform his dreams into reality? In the immediate aftermath of Claire's unexpected entrance, the air crackled with both tension and opportunity. Danny's heart raced, each beat echoing the tumult of what was about to transpire. He had etched his truth with words and sketches, yet standing before his father and Claire, the reality felt raw and daunting. This was at the moment that could either solidify his path forward or slam the door shut once again. "Do you see what is happening here?" Danny urged, his voice trembling with urgency. "This isn't just an art showcase, it's an opportunity to break free from expectations. It could change everything." He turned his gaze toward his father, imploring him to acknowledge the magnitude of his chance. For a long moment, his father remained still, eyes clouded with conflicting emotions. Frustration flickered beneath the surface, mingling with the glimmer of something deeper. Danny could almost sense the gears shifting in his father's mind, the struggle to reconcile years of rigid ideals with the vibrant possibility his son now laid before him. "I've always taught you to secure a stable future, Danny," his father finally said, tension coating his words. "Art is uncertain. You could be risking everything for a fleeting dream." "But I am the one taking this risk," Danny retorted, a surge of courage welling up inside him. "If you can't see the value in my passion, then how can you claim to support me? You always told me to work hard and go after my dreams. This is me doing just that." His voice, steady and unwavering, pierced through the murky air of uncertainty. Surprisingly, Claire chimed in, "The beauty of art isn't just in its creation, it's in its ability to inspire, to create dialogue, and yes, to make a living too. Danny's perspective is a reflection of his truth, and if you can support him, you might find new ground as a family." The conviction of her words created a dam of understanding that he hoped would burst open. A flicker of doubt crossed his father's face, but Danny pressed on, refusing to let this moment slip through his fingers. "Dad, you raised me to stand up for what I believe in. I need to embrace my creativity if I want to thrive, not just survive. It's time to confront the past, to honor the journey of understanding, instead of allowing fear to hold us captive." As the words settled, the shifting terrain of their conversation felt charged with potential, the silence now suffused with something different, a willingness to confront the shadows of their collective pasts. Danny observed his father, the lines on his face etched deeply with conflict, and it dawned on him that perhaps his father too needed this moment of vulnerability. The father he'd known had been the stoic protector, but beneath that facade lay a man burdened by expectations of his own making. Perhaps revealing his path might allow them both the freedom they so desperately sought. "Maybe I can help you find your footing in the art world," Danny's father offered, the cautious optimism in his tone an unexpected relief. "If this really matters to you, then let us explore how to make it work together. Just promise me you'll have a backup plan." A tide of relief washed over Danny. Grounded in shared aspirations, they were no longer adversaries but allies aiming for mutual understanding. It was a dramatic shift from their previous exchanges, the undercurrents now filled with respect instead of division. He could feel the walls between them beginning to crumble. "I can do that, Dad, as long as we keep communicating," he replied, a genuine smile breaking through his previously furrowed brows. Suddenly, Claire's phone buzzed, interrupting the budding connection, but she only smiled wider. "This is a beautiful moment. Don't let it go unnoticed. We can work together to incorporate both your visions, yours as an artist, and your father's perspective on building a sustainable future." As Danny turned back to his father, he saw him nodding slowly, taking in the scope of not only the possibilities but also the weight of what they were beginning to forge. This newfound bond offered redemption for the shadows that had hung over them. "I'd like to see what you've created," his father said, breaking through the shell of apprehension. "Really?" Danny questioned, a flicker of hope igniting once more. "Yes," his father replied, a glimmer of warmth in his eyes. "But know that it will take time for me to understand the language of art." With that, Danny took a deep breath, sensing resolution on the horizon. They would no longer be merely father and son mired in expectations, they were evolving into collaborators who could exchange ideas and challenges with open hearts. Later that week, as Danny stood at the entrance of the art gallery, surrounded by vibrant pieces and shared passions, he felt a surge of pride. The showcase was a testament not just to his efforts but to their journey of understanding a reconciliation of past and future entwined through creativity. As the evening unfolded, his eyes scanned the crowd, seeking the familiar figure of his father. When at last they met, it was with a sense of belonging. They shared a silent acknowledgement, a flicker of understanding passing between them that spoke to a bond transformed by vulnerability. Together, they embraced the beauty of a relationship forged anew, conquering fears with every brushstroke he laid upon the canvas of his journey. Danny felt a profound sense of fulfillment, evidence of the monumental shift not only in his circumstances but also in his self-recognition. He had stepped beyond the shadows of his father's expectations into the light of his own aspirations, proving to himself and his father that pursuing one's passion did not equate to abandoning family but rather a journey towards a stronger identity. With the night drawing to a close, he stood alongside his father, filled with gratitude not just for this moment, but for the future they would continue to build together. Now is the time to embrace your journey towards personal growth. If you resonate with these stories of transformation, you need to subscribe now to our channel. Leave a like now to support the content you love, and comment below your thoughts and how you relate to this moment of growth. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us inspire each other to conquer our fears and achieve our dreams.